Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Patty Colley, and on behalf of the Oklahoma Hotel and Lodging Association, I'd like to welcome all of you to our annual STR forecasting event. We've had almost 100 people from the industry register for today's session, so thank you for being with us and spending the time. Speaking of in-person, I hope that you've blocked your calendar for our January 19th, 2022 Lodging Summit, which is held in Oklahoma City at the Embassy Suites on Northwest Expressway. And if you have been there before, you know we have a lot of fun. It's where you'll get to talk about what's going on in the industry, visit with suppliers who are going to provide great resources for your success. And then we'll also celebrate our stars of the industry and some of the best and brightest associates from Oklahoma. So look for that link later to register from one of our OHLA updates. Just a few housekeeping notes. Although cameras and audio are turned off for this session and will remain off, we do want it to be interactive. So please place all of your questions in the chat feature, either publicly or to Patty Colley, and at various times. Our speakers are going to pause and answer those questions. So you'll have plenty of time for responses. No worries, our presentation will be shared with members through our weekly update and available on our OHLA website for reference when the video is compiled. The great thing about this year is you'll have the commentary that goes behind it instead of just reading the report on your own. So we're excited for that as well. Before we hear from STR, I want to thank our sponsor of this session, Riverwind Hotel. Riverwind leadership has been a huge proponent of making this data event available to our members each year, and we thank them very much for their investment. Now, for more about STR, as most of you know, STR provides clients with data benchmarking, analytics, and marketplace insights. You know it, it's that tool that you use to evaluate your hotel's performance against its competitive set and track information like occupancy and room rate and RevPAR. And I might add, if for some reason your hotel isn't currently reporting to STR, we really encourage you to do so because that just makes the data better for everyone to use. We're fortunate to have two presenters from STR with us today. First, Rico Lau, who is the regional sales manager at STR. He joined STR in 2015 and is responsible for building and maintaining positive relationships with clients throughout the central states of the US, as well as Mexico. He achieved his degree in hotel and restaurant management in Spain, no less, where he lived for 31 years, which sounds very exciting. He now resides in Tennessee, close to the US headquarters for STR. And then Luke Vaneski. He's relatively new to STR and serves as a sales associate. He's a graduate of New York University, where he earned his master's in hospitality revenue management. And you want to pay attention to Luke because Luke is your new go-to associate at STR for anything regarding Oklahoma. So maybe you'll be able to capture his information at the end of the session and reach out to him if you need some help. Rico and Luke, welcome to the both of you. We're thrilled that you're here. And I'm going to turn it over to you because I know you have a lot of information to share.
We certainly do. Thank you so much, Patty, for that wonderful introduction. We're very excited, both of us, to bring you this data, and hopefully this places or puts you in a position to forecast and foresee, do the work that is kind of ahead of you with the lodging industry. I am going to turn my video off just so I have a little bit more real estate on the presentation. And with no further ado, I will be doing the first part of the presentation, really giving you an update on the US. And then Luke, being the point person, being the person who knows most about Oklahoma, he will then deep dive into your markets, performance. We've got pipeline, new construction, and of course, forecasting for your budget and performance, hopefully in a much more successful year than 2020, which we kind of scrapped. We have used a lot of 2019 data to give you an idea of where we are. So moving along, here we are. Patty covered this. These are the 5 buckets that we service the industry with, from performance reports all the way to forecasting. I am not going to spend so much time here, but we do actually analyze, and we are the benchmark specialists. We are a marvelous report card to your hotel where you can measure something, you can certainly improve it. And that's the intention behind STR and their STAR report. Our first look is global. I actually I took this from our monthly update. So this is monthly data. You will see in September, indexed to 2019. What that means is by using the value of 100, that puts today's value at point, at the height of 2019. United States has 93 points indexed to 2019. So we're very close to that performance seen back in that period. Middle East is the only other country that's in the 90s. Everyone else is still trying to figure out how they rebound from this pandemic that we're still going through, but we're learning to live with. So interesting data, as you see. The North America, excluding US, that number is Canada, Mexico, and the Caribbean. So 75, they're kind of a little behind. I'm going to blame the Canadians for closing their borders and not being friends. But we all know that that is all with safety in mind. Now the borders are open, we should see interesting data moving forward. We took in this survey to kind of illustrate the sentiment. As you can see, the top 2 reasons being government, restrictions, and quarantines. Those are the factors that hinder our business and the traveler. More importantly is that financial factor is mid and last in all these responses. So as the government and as countries, they understand how they will let us move, we do see that travel sentiment to improve. We thought this information had a lot to do with what we're covering. Here's an update. This is a year to date for the US. Again, that column to your far right is talking about that index. That room supply, TRI standing for total room inventory, is actually considering even temporary rooms that are not available currently, but it's a way to help financial institutions understand what the performance looks like. Supply has already surpassed 2019, hence it's over 100. ADR, we have seen some compelling data about how rate is actually excelling, is doing well. It is really the demand and the occupancy that are behind. We do see RevPAR, of course, being the lowest index at 79, nearly 80, which of course is highly pushed or has to do with the occupancy and demand being lacking. Probably group business hoping to fill a void has a lot to do with that. And we can talk about it in a few more slides. I used something we called a 12-month moving average. So every month we take the average of the last 12 to smoothen the line out. As you can see, 2020, round about March, we fell off a precipice, even with this data reading. And the blue line being your demand, those are the people buying hotel rooms, declined to just over 40%, and then rebound in a very quick period. September 2021, we are way above by using this technique of moving average. I slide away and using still the 12-month moving average, we look at percent changes for occupancy and for the ADR, average daily rate. Couple of blimps, as you can see, the 2000 and 2000-ish, that was the 9/11 kind of crisis, or was the crisis there? 2009 was the mortgage debacle. So we see there too that there was some decline in occupancy and ADR, but yet COVID is a much deeper impact. But the shape of the recovery is also something that tells us that this pandemic, even though we still live with it, we are on a much faster path coming through. With all this movement you see here, I've moved away from using the 12-month moving average. And here you're seeing what is a month-by-month RevPAR index all the way back to 1990. So we're looking at how the industry has gone through. Again, we know what happened around 2000 and 2009. Those were those two crises. But what is really interesting, again, is to see how with COVID, we did drop further, but our rebound was much quicker. If you look at the economy crisis that we had in 2009, the walk out of that precipice or valley was much slower compared to really that rapid climb out of COVID. We always look to group, and we wanted to understand how group was performing. And here it's indexed to the 2019, and there are some good blimps. We see July and August coming in. You will see in our top 25 market report that big cities are still struggling, but there has been group weddings, smaller meetings are happening. And as you can see, that recovery is happening with a slight deceleration in these last 2 months recorded. I turn around to a quick US class review. And here we go. We're looking again at your occupancy and ADR index. So again, we are taking September data, we're comparing it to September of 2019. We can see that ADR is in all classes, except for upper upscale and upscale, tend to be our heavier meeting hotels, which is where that group business is lacking. But we're seeing how everything is trending around about the same in ADR. Very different for the occupancy. We understand that the mid-scale and economy throughout the pandemic, they did actually benefit from, did benefit from stays that they were using, some of them for what could be related to hosting COVID patients as well. Now, when we then turn to the RevPAR, we're measuring this year to date. The RevPAR is very equal in the classes reviewed. We know that because of the ADR that we saw in luxury, that RevPAR index is actually ahead by the hotels that are reporting. That's the standard. Now, if we looked at hotels that are part of the total room inventory, it's a little bit less because of the inventory not being there. But mostly, as you can see, when we look at upper, or even from upscale all the way down to economy, those two metrics are pretty much equal, and it's due to that inventory being back. But the RevPAR is trending in equal paces, which talks to the recovery in the US. Just as a final, what we did here was we took year-to-date September, and we looked at the 3 years as we go through 2019, 20, and 21. What we did was study what was the average daily rate within these classes. Luxury takes an exponential step, $40. We've measured that. upper upscale and upscale classes, we did see in prior slides how they were still dealing with the crisis, and it also shows in their rate. But then we moved down into the lower classes, if not equal to 2019, very close, like the upper upscale class comparison. We move into segmentation, so interesting because of the group business. And here we look at what has happened from 2019, and this is demand. So we're seeing all the rooms purchased. So May, June, we see October nearly topping 9,000 rooms. Yet in our first successful year out of COVID, which I would consider 2021, we haven't gotten to those months. We actually see the Delta variant did play into this trend slowing down some in July and August. We now are past Labor Day. We should be more in conference calendars, yet there is still some, the data shows that we still have some way to go to hopefully make those numbers to 2019. Now, group rates is interesting because we look at transient and we look at the ADRs for the group. And this is important as you do your budgets, as you understand what that audience out there is willing to pay. And we have a case study for Oklahoma that Luke looked into, which is enlightening to this slide. But we see kind of how the gap now in August of 2021, both indices for ADR, total US, they have crossed the line compared to 2019, slight drop off in September for the group business. Finally, and looking at our RevPAR colors, the purple, we again study the RevPAR with transient and group. So again, we're taking into consideration occupancy and ADR to make up this RevPAR number. And as you can see, in the same fashion as we showed earlier, with not only rate, but it is really the occupancy portion here that is holding RevPAR back in crossing that line with 2019. We now do a little market study. We take the most populated or concentrated markets in the US as far as hotel rooms. And instead of drowning you in kind of bad or average data, we prefer to pull the best and the worst. I like to say the leaders and the stragglers, but we also plugged in, we also kind of put where Oklahoma and Tulsa, Oklahoma City, sorry, where they actually trend. And so we know with an influence of military or I don't think Nashville will be proud that we are advertising that it's just bachelorettes that's keeping them up and afloat. But we do know that Nashville is actually busy being just 25 miles north. It is good to see how our city has rebounded. That proof of that is that RevPAR change that's over 2020. So it is a big jump. But Oklahoma City has a 48, nearly 49% change in their RevPAR over 2020 year to date. And Tulsa is close by. So those are good points, or should I say, highlights, especially for your markets compared. And we talk a little bit about the losers. The lockdowns are just hurting business. By the looks of our metrics, New York has climbed out of that straggler list. Washington and San Francisco still trying to rebound from the limitations of access that has been put upon them. Here's the occupancy gap, and what we pulled was the top 25 markets, and then secondary and tertiary markets, which includes Oklahoma City and Tulsa. So kind of guide yourselves by that lighter teal color. And as you can see, the gap is closing, the difference is less. We do know that in part of this recovery, folks did travel, they drove to wide open spaces and really tried to manage themselves on that vacation or the time that they had using hotels. It wasn't really business, it wasn't really an urban or highly concentrated cities. So that gap, as we move forward, we've seen a narrowing happening there in occupancy. Let's fold it over and look at the rates. The top 25 markets have conducted a better rate, but to kind of look at tertiary and secondary markets, they're not far behind. So this crisis has created a lift. Luke will actually go into that when we do your market studies with data. But again, the difference is happening again between these two metrics. Pipeline, this is all the new construction that STR monitors. We are obsessed about room supply. And the most common question that we get is, has pipeline slowed down with COVID? Yes, it did, but we still hear it's easy to borrow money. We still see, and Luke will actually bring an update about pipeline in Oklahoma State and in its markets too. It is happening. There's no true slowdown to what is going on with the pipeline, yet it slowed down a little from the peak in April of 2020, but nothing alarming per our trends. And as you can see in this line, it's currently a pipeline of 172,000 rooms that are being not only built, but also planned. Those are all the phases in construction here. And to kind of go with my point about is this pipeline or construction investment, is it slowing down? The answer is no. Projected to open, so this is in 2021, so these are actually cranes and hard hats all working together to make these rooms be delivered in 2021. They far exceed the 120,000 plus that we had in 2019. So things by measurement are in the US trending forward, which is also another light of optimism as we navigate COVID. Where does this all concentrate? Where is the construction happening? We've seen this trend. It's quite a hard trend now. It is in the upscale, upper mid-scale. We talk about limited service. It's funny, limited service has changed a little bit now. Limited service has a pantry and probably some service of delivery for food to kind of stay with trends and to make that crowd use the hotel. But 54% of the in construction rooms is happening in those two, and I'm going to call them scales, not classes. And I'll explain this about pipeline is because the independent hotels could pick a flag, could become branded, we call them unaffiliated. So those are independent rooms, but those independent rooms could pick up a flag while in construction or close to opening. So we measure it that way. So right now, ahead of everyone is upscale and upper mid-scale. Looking at kind of what is the weight as far as rooms going in with the mix of tertiary and secondary markets compared to those top 25, the top 25 do command quite a portion, nearly half. We also broke it down in our pipeline phases. We have the closest to opening is in construction. Final planning is really very close to construction, and planning could be at least 13 or more months away from final planning. But there you can see how that divides down into rooms and by top markets or other markets. Now, we talked a little bit about scales, and that's why we have to sort of see, or we will declare through our data that the big six, they really command kind of new construction at 76%. So 3/4 of that pipeline activity is branded, is with those parent companies, and then there's that all other, like I said earlier, that unaffiliated portion of construction that could pick up a flag maybe at a closer date. But it's interesting to see that there's still quite a bit of a command there by the big six. I am going to speak to forecasting for the US. So this is a general trend, and there's also some numbers. Luke has some much more dialed in numbers for you. So on a higher level, we want to talk a little bit about how successful we were in forecasting with this slide. What it really is telling ourselves is we are conservative, or that the industry is just moving at a little bit of a faster pace than we believed. That dark teal is the actual KPI of ADR and demand, and where we came in our forecasts. So yeah, take it with a pinch of salt, or it's good to be conservative and not go over. So I'll bring in our next slide, which is your forecast for US for 2021-22, like year end. The F stands for final, like for the year. And what I do like to show you is we also took that information and compared it to the RevPAR of a year. And 2020 finished kind of around the business pace of RevPAR that we had in 1995. 2021, we believe it's going to equate to something that we saw in 2012. So if you have STR reports that are that old, you can kind of look on a trend there. 2022, it's 2014. We did compare a lot of our data to 2019 because 2019 was the best recorded year till date by STR. Yet these are our forecasts. But what lies ahead? What we were wishing for would be an acute V shape has now turned into a Nike swoosh. So this recovery signal here or trend, I did put in bold the line for demand, because that's the actual recovery pacer that we are looking at. Because with demand coming back in, occupancy, probably group business, will be back, and then that way we will see a recovery. We understand that ADR will probably take some slight adjustments on the way with group business and with just an increase of demand and occupancy in general. Luke also has slides to talk about day of week in regards to that, for you to kind of measure what is maybe opportunity. But I found it interesting that we see 2023 as a year be at a RevPAR index or RevPAR number of 98 compared to 2019, but that demand line is above, quite above, and I think markets will move the other lines thanks to that forecast that demand will be back in 2023 year end. Just some few takeaways. We have a big conference, a data conference in Nashville in August. It's the Hotel Data Conference, and we constantly do these webinars, and therefore we have some good takeaways to share. We did see how the slowdown happened after Labor Day, and that conference calendar is a little muted. Food and beverage revenues, from what the hotels tell us, is down because of their group business. We have a P&L program, and we do see that they have other outlets that have shown to be more successful. So I think that's a coin with a heads and a tails for the food and beverage. The profit margins, well, we found that they remain normal, but one of the issues around the cost of staffing, and actually good staff, maybe is the most spoken point about margins, which is my last takeaway there, is the labor costs. And we just have to, I think, we heard some hotels, they are taking this time that is a bit of a slowdown after the summer. They are doing some, big hire events and trying to get some quality folks back into their properties to look forward to the business coming. I take a breather, and Patty, I open it up because this is my slide that lets me know that I am to turn it over to Luke for his insights to Oklahoma and the Oklahoma markets.
Thank you, Rico. We appreciate it. Just continue on, if you will.
Great. I am going to slide to one side, and everyone, here comes Luke.
Cool. All right. Thank you, Rico. Thank you, Patty, again for that brief introduction earlier. Just to kind of reiterate what Patty was saying, here at STR, we did a little reconstruction of our sales organization, and I fortunately got the chance to take over the state of Oklahoma. So I am really excited to be able to present this data to you going forward. And like Patty said earlier, I'm your go-to person here at STR. So anything at STR Oklahoma related, feel free to reach out to me. I don't want to say I'm an expert in Oklahoma yet, but dang, I'm going to be. So anyway, going forward, feel free to reach out. So the next part of this presentation, I want to kind of dive into Oklahoma as a state, look into the major markets of Oklahoma City and Tulsa, even get further down into the submarkets of those cities. I want to break it down into data for day of the week, running 12, all the things that everyone is here to see. So this first part of the data that I pulled is just a general overview of occupancy and ADR for the state of Oklahoma, running 7 days. You can see that the state is getting up there to right around the 2019 levels, which is good to see. Like Patty said, I come from a revenue management background. So the first thing that I see when I look at graphs like this is the gap. I want to see the occupancy and the ADR right around the same levels. I definitely want to see if there's revenue to be had, if there's revenue left on the table. And here I think that the state as overall probably could close some gaps. So next I looked into Oklahoma City market as a market to show ADR and occupancy also. Now this is really interesting because of the spikes, and Patty, she'll attest to this. She wanted to see all of the sporting event spikes. So fortunately, I was able to show those. Yeah, all the way back into 2020 through 2021 here. You can see all of the sporting event spikes, usually from Oklahoma. Back in 2020, we see Oklahoma and Kansas. Here in early spring, we see Oklahoma and Missouri. The Women's World Series was held in Oklahoma City. An equestrian event in the summer was held in Oklahoma City. And then just recently, Oklahoma against Nebraska and West Virginia. And again, there's some gaps that I want closed as a revenue manager. Knowing that these events are coming up, I would love to see the ADR kind of reach the occupancy levels and see that revenue get gained. So the next market is Tulsa. Now with Tulsa, I don't really know what these spikes are. So this is my opportunity to reach out to anyone in the Tulsa market. Please feel free to show any of these spikes. Tell anybody if anybody has any questions about these spikes. I unfortunately couldn't research it enough to figure out what exactly was happening in your market to see these spikes. But what I did see was the gaps, and there's not many, and that's what I like to see. That just shows that the Tulsa market definitely sees that there is events coming up. They're able to kind of prepare for those events. And I like to see when the ADR and the occupancy are right around the same levels. So this next set of data, I just wanted to kind of dive into weekday and weekend. Again, this is the state level. Here we can see that currently there's only a 6% occupancy that separates the weekend and weekday. But we also see these spikes. And again, what we just saw was all of the events. And I wanted to point out the 4 highest percentages in the state overall. And you can kind of see that it's above the 2020 levels, which is a good sign. So we're trending in the right direction statewide. Now, again, we kind of break down Oklahoma City, and we can see the spikes again where the sporting events happened. And that gap is upwards of 30% in the occupancy, which is significant. So we kind of want to see if those weekday numbers can kind of close into those gaps. Next again is the Tulsa. Here we see there's only 30% occupancy gap. Again, there's the spikes. And I just highlighted the top 4 percentages. Here, I just wanted to point out the ADR for each day of the week. Now, these next 3, again, I'm going to go through Oklahoma State, Oklahoma City, and Tulsa. And I'm going to toggle back and forth through all 3 of these because you can kind of see a trend, especially after the seasonal downtick of the state. We see that climb and then the events that happened in October. And we can see that Oklahoma City is helping drive those ADR numbers. And if we look back and forth, they're very similar. Now, when we get into Tulsa, these ADR numbers, you can see the uptick, but then there was a drop in around the August area. So if we just toggle back and forth, we can see they're all very similar, which is, those are numbers I like to see when it comes to ADR. So the next set of data, I wanted to kind of benchmark both cities, Oklahoma City and Tulsa, against some similar markets in different states. I picked Austin, Dallas, Fort Worth, Arlington, and Kansas City. Now this is a little busy. These are all occupancy levels through all of these 6 markets. So what I wanted to do is kind of highlight where Tulsa and Oklahoma City is. So I highlighted them in this graph here. And you can see where the spike was, again, in Oklahoma City with the sporting events. And right now, this last month or 2 is kind of flip-floppy in occupancy in both cities. Again, I'm not sure what the events were happening there and why that was happening, but both cities are really kind of above the 65% occupancy level throughout the year. And that is just showing that those are numbers where they are, if not on 2019 level, they're very close. So here I just pulled up the ADR again. We see a spike in Austin here, and Austin kind of drives these 6 markets for sure. I think Formula One is happening in Austin this month. So that's why we see this spike. But the most important thing is, I'm going to highlight both Oklahoma City and Tulsa again, is both cities are kind of trending on the lower level of all of these markets when it comes to ADR. I feel that there is a little bit of room to grow, but the good thing is both markets are holding steady at above $80 ADR through 2021. So that's a good sign. Now, just to kind of drive it home, I put the RevPAR numbers here also. Again, both markets are right in the mix of things, kind of on the lower level. Here I have them highlighted again just for visual. And yeah, again, I just think that there's room for improvement, but we're holding it the $40 RevPAR, which is a good sign when you can kind of hold the number steady. So this is kind of a case study where I wanted to look into a market that saw the events coming and understood the assignment. So I picked San Antonio, and you can see where San Antonio spiked this year. March Madness finals in the spring, and then their patented Fiesta Festival. They knew that these festivals and these sporting events were coming up, so they were able to close those gaps, similar to like what I was talking about earlier in my part of the presentation. These spikes are significant. We can see a $90 ADR and over 110 ADR RevPAR this year. So I wanted to highlight that just to show what some of the other cities, when they see these events coming, they know what to do, and they don't leave any revenue on the table. And that's what I want to be here for Oklahoma as a state, is I want to help see these spikes and understand what's going on. So here I kind of broke down Tulsa and Oklahoma City into their submarket areas. And this is the occupancy level. So I wanted to highlight that summer is peak, and we can see that in the historical data, 18, 19, then we see the drop in 20, but we're back to the regular levels here in 21. And then if we look in the forecast in 2022, we can see they're actually a little bit higher than what they were in the past. So that's a good sign when it comes to occupancy level and on like the forecast side of things. Now you'll see the Tulsa CBD kind of doesn't have enough data to do forecasting. And I don't know why, but I'm pretty sure it's because of the group demand. So once the group demand kind of comes back from the CBD, we'll be able to get that data in there and see the forecast. So now I bounce to the Oklahoma City submarkets. Again, we can see their peaks are in the summer, their valleys are in the winter, and it's trending the exact same way that Tulsa is, which is a great sign. And the forecast in 2022, the South and the airport are really leading the way, which are above normal levels from the past data that we have. So anyone in those submarkets, make sure that you see that and you understand, and you can definitely benchmark yourselves during that time. So here, I just wanted to look at the ADR in those submarkets also. Everybody's kind of doing really kind of running the same lines as in the past. We don't see a lot of movement, but now we're back to the normal levels. And there a little bit of spike at the end of 22 in the forecast. Again, Tulsa CBD doesn't have sufficient data, so we can't really see it forecast at the moment. Same with Oklahoma City. Their ADR is very similar. We see the ups and downs in the summer and into the winter months and the seasonality. The good thing about the end of this year, we see Norman and Moore submarket kind of ending on a high, which is a great sign. And everyone kind of looking at the forecast in the 2022 year, very similar in the past. So we're back to normal levels when it comes to the submarket areas. So here I wanted to look into some of the collapsed classes, just to kind of look into the submarket areas, just to kind of show you where these categories are. Now, if you look at Tulsa, you can see that the luxury has a lot of room to recover. That makes a lot of sense, especially during the times we are in right now. Again, the luxury and upper upscale doesn't have the data to forecast in that area. But we do see that the economy and mid-scale are back upwards, if not getting close to the normal levels in 2019 when it comes to a class and a scale level. And then here's the breakdown of Oklahoma City. Also, we see their luxury has a lot of room to recover, but the upper scale and upper mid scale, they're kind of leading the way. And that makes sense because I don't know if anyone knows this, but the upper mid scale and upscale make up over 60% of Oklahoma's total hotel scales. So that makes sense to see that spike and to see them driving the market. So here I just kind of pulled some things for demand. You can see that in Tulsa, the group is roaring back. We see those spikes there in June and August. Definitely above, if not above 2019 levels, it's definitely close to it. And we also see the trends in the transient lines with the spikes in events and kind of staying on the same levels throughout the year on a plateau. And then here's Oklahoma City. The transient demand majorly surpasses the 2019 levels. We see that in March, which makes sense. That was probably the March Madness, everyone coming to the city. A little bit more room for group improvements. We do see a couple of spikes in the summertime, and that both lines definitely plateauing, which again is a good sign. So here I pulled the data to see what the rooms, the room forecasts were, what came into the market since March 2020. We see that there was 502 rooms delivered to the market in 6 different properties. If you look at the scale below, this is the Oklahoma State as a whole. We can see exactly where the bread and butter is in the upper scale and upper mid scale. So this is the total projects that I was able to pull in the state as a whole. So there are 76 projects with over 7,000 rooms coming in with the next 7 years. The construction phase projects in Oklahoma City are 10, Tulsa 2, and the other markets, there's also 2. And they're bringing, this is just in the next 18 months, they're potentially bringing around a little over 1,200 rooms to the market just in the next finalized construction phase. So back again here, we look at the Oklahoma City market. There are 950 rooms delivered. We see the luxury one that was delivered at the beginning of this year. I'm pretty sure we all know what hotel that one was in Oklahoma City. If we don't know, I'll let you know. It was the Omni. So next is the Tulsa market. Not much movement in Tulsa, just 103 rooms added since March 2022 or 2020. So not a good or bad sign. So now I'm going to give a little bit of love to the rest of Oklahoma. I know I focused a lot on Oklahoma City and Tulsa, and one of the main reasons why is we have a lot of participation in those 2 major markets. So the other 2 markets in Oklahoma are Oklahoma West, Oklahoma East. Now we can kind of see on a RevPAR level, they both trend in similar directions. Now I put the dollar number isn't sufficient. And what I mean by that is there's probably 80% of both of those markets that do not submit data to us. And that is for me. So my goal right now, Oklahoma statewide only has a little right around 65% participation statewide. My goal for Oklahoma is to get upwards into the 90% percentile level. And when we get all of these participation properties, we can see that these numbers will grow. There's no doubt in my mind that the RevPAR in Oklahoma West and East isn't around 50 $50 at the end of 2022. Now, with more participation, we'll see those numbers rise. But that is where I'm going to ask everyone here from Oklahoma kind of to help me out. I'm looking at places like Muskogee, Ardmore, McAllister, Lawton. With all those areas, they have good participation, but not enough. And I want to partner with everybody. I would love to partner with the CVB, A&P office to reach out to these hotels that do not submit the data so we can get sufficient data to present to these markets. Like I said, that's my goal, is to get into the 90 percentile level. And I know I got a lot of work to do, but I definitely want to use this time to kind of make connections with everybody. So please reach out to me. We have products that range from the free level to benchmarking properties against other properties. If there's something that an area or a specific hotel is looking for, we have it, and I want to help. I want to get to that 90 percentile level. And with that being said, I want to just kind of get into what we are up to here at STR. And we have a monthly P&L program, but again, we can only offer it to hotels and areas that submit data to us. And we've been getting a lot of inquiries about this particular program, especially with the labor costs these days. They want to get a little bit better numbers and ahead of the game when it comes to when labor will be back and how much it's going to cost the property or their areas. So this is another program that we're kind of building on. And we're really very excited about this. But again, like I said, we need participation. I think, what is it, about 70% of participation is when we can kind of get the right numbers to give to areas and properties in general. So again, we need participants in order to get the actual data out there. And another thing that we've been working on is forward data. Forward Star is in 8 or 9 markets at the moment, and we are looking to expand that nationally and globally at some point. Again, we're just working on participation. This Forward Star will be kind of geared similar to the D-Star reports, where it'll be benchmarking properties and areas against their comp sets or the areas that they want to be benchmarked against. So those are 2 really exciting things that we've been doing here at STR, all with the previous data that we have and forward-looking data that we're going to get. And with that, I am finished with my part of the presentation. So please feel free, Patty, open it up to any questions or comments that people might have.
Great, thank you. We do not have any questions yet. A few things that have come out of that, and one comment. A comment from a member that Oklahoma seems to be leaving a little too much money on the table when it comes to rate. Personal comment from that member, so take that with you for the day. I think we definitely want to do our part in Oklahoma to encourage the demand increases prior to 2023, as you anticipate. We'd love to see those numbers come up sooner than that. The group business is coming back. That is positive. Hopefully we can bring the ADR more in line. And, finally, I mean, just an overarching comment from us, we'd sure like to get back to or exceed those 2019 numbers as quickly as we can. There seems to be another question coming in. How can we participate in the P&L STR? Oh, you already answered it. Okay, so there is an email, info@str.com for more information. And then Luke, would you be able to put your email address in the chat for anyone who wants to check on that? And have a personal phone call with you. And then there may be some people on here from Lawton, from some of the other areas that you talked about that you'd like to get more data that may be able to help you. So if you could put your email address in there and they're on the call and I don't know it, that might help expedite that just a little bit more. So if there are any last minute questions, please ask those now. As soon as Luke puts his email address into, he just did, into the chat feature. I'll give you a moment to grab that. And we really want to thank you for your time today, for putting the data together to help us, look and see what exactly that we already knew happened, confirm that's happened earlier the last 2 years, and then take a good look at what's coming down the pike for 2022. And as I said, hoping we all get back to some better numbers, better business prior to 2023, which I know is the anticipated date for recovery. But I want to thank you for participating today. Excuse me, Luke and Rico, we couldn't thank you enough. I want to thank Riverwind Hotel again, and we hope to see everyone soon at an in-person event. So please remember that we will get a video of this out to membership in the next day or so. It will be housed on our website, and we really, truly appreciate you being with us today. So thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Patty.